The recording has started now. I would like to start off this event with a quote. The beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take it away from you. This quote is by an American singer-songwriter, B.B. King. So, a very good morning to everyone gathered here today. We are all here today to learn something new that is going to stay with us for the rest of our lives and have a great impact on us. I, Raghav, welcome our chief guest of the day, Professor Ashwin W. Patwardhan, our Dean, Dr. K.S. Rajan, School of Chemical and Biotechnology, Associate Dean, Dr. V. Ponuswamy, School of Chemical and Biotechnology, respected professors, alumni members, external participants, and students. I now request Ms. Aishwarya to begin the event with the prayer song. Please take over. Now, I request Mr. S. Srinivasan, Chairperson of the IICHE Students Chapter, Shastra, to give the welcome address. Do take over.
A very good morning to everyone present here. I extend a warm welcome to the dignitaries who have joined us in this meet. Our chief guest, Dr. Ashwin W. Patwardhan, HOD, Professor, Department of Chemical Engineering, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. Our Dean, Dr. K.S. Rajan, sir, School of Chemical and Biotechnology. Our Associate Dean, Dr. V. Ponuswamy, sir, School of Chemical and Biotechnology. Our respected faculty members, our alumni members, external participants, and the students of the Department of Chemical Engineering. I welcome you all to the inauguration of the 8th edition of the National Conference on Advances in Process Engineering 2021. This is a conference that is organized by the IICHE Students Chapter of SASTA. This 8th edition of the CAPE 2021 is the first time ever it is being held completely online. And being the first time ever, we have this has really made the conference expand its reach throughout the nation, having 90 plus registrations with 31 internal participants and 59 external participants, covering 16 colleges from all the southern states and also states like Jharkhand, Goa, Calcutta, and even Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. So this CAPE has really unified chemical engineers nationally, though distanced by distanced. So as we are in a conference on process engineering, I would like to elucidate the significance of process engineering. So the process engineering involves is nothing but is the means by which a raw material is converted into a commodity of commercial significance. And the aspects of process engineering, like development of a process that is feasible for converting the raw material, um, the designing of this process on an industrial scale, commissioning of this process in an industrial scale, and then finally operating at an optimal conditions and on a consistent manner. So these being the aspects of the process engineering, the decisions that are taken within these aspects that govern these aspects are the main things that are the constraints or that determine the ultimate economics of the product and its global value. Thus, we being chemical engineers, in an undergraduate level, we have to strengthen our fundamentals in this level so as to execute the role of a process engineer when we go to the industrial scale. Thus, I end this address with a message that was given by Linus Carl Perling, who is an American scientist and a chemical engineer. Only when I began studying chemical engineering did I realize that I myself might discover something new about the nature of the world. Thank you. I once again welcome everyone to this meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivasan. I now kindly request Dr. V. Ponuswamy, Associate Dean, School of Chemical and Biotechnology, to address the gathering. Sir, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 8th edition of the National Conference on Advances in Process Engineering, CAPE 2021. This is an annual event of IICHE Students Chapter at Shastra Deemed University. And this is the first time the CAPE is being conducted in the virtual mode. We have planned it for a span of over 2 weeks between 20th February and 7th March. I extend my warm welcome to the speaker, Professor Ashwin W. Patwardhan, Professor and Head, Department of Chemical Engineering, ICT, Mumbai, Dr. K.S. Rajan, Dean SCBT, faculty members, and my dear students for the inaugural ceremony of CAPE 2021. The Department of Chemical Engineering at Sastra University was established in the year 1994, and the IICHE chapter, student chapter of Sastra, was established in the year 2011. The student chapter at Sastra University has been conducting symposiums every year since its inception. The first edition of CAPE happened in the year 2013. The objective of this conference is to provide interdisciplinary forum for researchers and engineers to share and discuss their ideas on the emerging issues in process engineering. So this conference paves way for the students community to interact with eminent industrialists, academicians from all over the globe. The first edition of in this edition of CAPE, we have 4 guest lectures from esteemed speakers. We have paper presentation from the participants and technical events which will help the students in exploring the various facets of chemical engineering. So as an integral part of CAPE, we have a DW Sim workshop, and this workshop aims at giving basic insights into the design and simulation of process flow sheets. And once again, I formally welcome the speaker of the day, Professor Ashwin W. Patwardhan, Head of the Department of Chemical Engineering, ICT Mumbai. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, with the Chief Guest's permission, we would like to release the Book of Abstracts. Sir, do we have your permission for the same?
Yes, please. Let's go ahead. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. I now request the Book of Abstracts to be displayed on the screen. The link for the flip book will be put on the chat box as well. Thank you. I now request Ms. Pooja S. to introduce our chief guest for the day. Please take over.
A very warm good morning to one and all present here. Our chief guest of the day, Dr. Ashwin W. Patwardhan, Head of the Department and Professor, Department of Chemical Engineering, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, received his PhD in Chemical Engineering in 1998. He pursued his MS in Chemical Engineering in 1995. He was the gold medalist of University of Mumbai during his undergraduate. His areas of expertise include membrane separation, computational fluid dynamics, transport phenomena, and multi-phase reactor mixing. His ongoing research projects include synthesis of carbon nanotubes, characterization and design of jet-proof reactors, advanced membrane separation processors, CFP modeling of pulse extraction columns, thermodynamics of extraction systems, and modeling of multi-phase fluids. Over the years, he has guided 13 students in completing their PhD. In addition, 44 students have completed their masters under his guidance. Being an active researcher, he has published 84 papers in his distinguished career spanning over 20 years. He has been recognized by the Industrial and Engineering Chemistry Research Journal for making notable contributions in research and testing, and is a recipient of the 2020 Excellence in Review Award, making this the 4th time he has received this prestigious award, while he had received this recognition 3 times before during the 2016 to 19 period. He has also offered several training programs in his area of expertise, helping both his students and colleagues alike to gain new perspectives and enhance their learning and understanding of chemical engineering. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. Now, as a token of gratitude, we would like our Dean to give consent to show the memento to our chief guest. The memento is displayed on the screen, and the same will be couriered to you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I kindly request Professor Ashwin W. Patwardhan, Head of Department and Professor, Department of Chemical Engineering, Institute of Chemical Engineering, Mumbai, to deliver his guest lecture on tea infusion. Sir, please. I request the participants to raise their questions to the chat box, if any.
Yeah, sure. I will just need to start my sharing. Yeah.
Sir, maybe you can just tilt your camera slightly down.
Yeah, Dr. Naren? Yes, go ahead.
No, your camera you can slightly tilt down so people can see you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so very good morning to all of you. Thank you for those kind words in the introduction. I don't like too much this online mode of giving a lecture, but can't help it now. But what I will try to do is I will try to stop at different places in the lecture. And if all of you have some pens and paper ready, you can just, whatever questions I ask or whatever I ask you to think about, just jot them down in your notebook. Unfortunately, we can't share all these, or unfortunately, we can't sort of have a dialogue. But at least let us try to do a little bit more brainstorming rather than just one-way delivery of a lecture. So very first activity I am going to ask you to do. So the topic that I am going to speak on is on infusion or infusion of tea. So as you all know, we all drink tea and coffee and so on. And the process is we take hot water and we put these tea granules, and then we allow for some time, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And then we get an infusion of these tea granules, and then we drink that infusion and we feel happy and we don't feel sleepy in the lecture. So I assume that you have already had your tea in the morning and then you are wide awake. And same thing happens in coffee also. Only thing in coffee, the particle size is smaller, and therefore the infusion is faster, as well as a different flavor comes because of all the components. It's coming from a different plant, and therefore you get a different flavor. So in principle, the concepts are the same, whether it is tea or coffee. And in general, you can even think about this as any leaching process from any natural product. So nowadays there are so many so much emphasis on natural products and Ayurvedic products, and we take a brew of different drugs and herbs and so many things we do to keep ourselves healthy and to keep ourselves immune from the virus. All those concepts are essentially the same. That you have some aqueous medium, you heat it up to high temperature, you have a material in the solid phase that has some bioactive compounds, depending on the plant, where it is taken from, whether it is root or seed or fruit, whatever it is. It is ground into a fine powder, and then you allow contact between that fine powder and hot water, and then we remove that powder and we drink the infusion. So it is the concepts are same. We have been looking at tea infusion for quite some time. These were part of a Unilever project. And what I would like you to do in just next 30 seconds or so, just try to think about all chemical engineering concepts that you can think about that come into play when we make an infusion. So 30 seconds, I'm going to stop talking. You just jot it down on your piece of paper. Don't worry whether it is right or wrong. Just jot down some things, some chemical engineering principles that you think are useful or that come into play when we make an infusion of tea. So your time starts now.
Yeah. You want to put them in chat also?
No, not required in the chat, because there's no way I will look at all the things in the
Okay.
chat. So just we do this exercise for ourselves. It is not really, I mean,
Okay.
it's been a interactive session.
Yeah, if you want them to read, I can read it for you because you won't be able to see the chat. So
Yeah.
I can see the chat and read if that's okay to you.
That's okay with me. Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead and read.
Yeah, so that means students, you can put it in the chat also.
Yeah, okay. Let's put it in the chat. That's a good idea.
Right. And I will read it for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So
There's a-
another 30 seconds for you to just put it in the chat box.
Thank you. So there is using heat in the process. I am reading exactly the same words
Yes.
without changing.
Yes. please.
Right.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Using heat in the process, diffusion, filtration, osmosis, mass transfer, leaching, reflex, extraction, diffusion, mixing, mass transfer, diffusion, leaching, decoction making,
Okay, great.
boiling.
Yeah, great. I think that's good. That's good. So I mean, everybody has written some things which are relevant. In fact, all of these are relevant, and I will show you how. And the point that I'm trying to make is that now you have listed out so many things. Can we quantify? Can we develop a model? And can we predict how long it will take for us to get an infusion for a given set of situations? So for a given temperature, given particle size, can we predict, or can we calculate how long we will need? That's the kind of thing that is required. I mean, just identifying the concepts is a first part, or a first step. We have to really go a lot further and try to quantify all the concepts that you have said. So this is what I'm going to sort of do in the course of the lecture. Just to give you a little bit more background. So when you pluck your tea leaves, they are sort of dried and withered, and they are broken up into smaller smaller parts of a leaf, and then they are fermented, where they are kept for a long time, where they undergo oxidation, and then you dry, and then that's what the tea that you get. And typically the particle size ranges right from 250 microns all the way up to millimeters, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, and so on. And these are not necessarily spherical granules, they are elongated. You have seen kind of things like Taj Mahal tea and all. They are not spherical particles, they are elongated particles. Essentially, it is just one leaf that you are drinking in one granule. In terms of the components that are leached out, so there are catechins, thiaflavins, tannins, which give you the color, and flavors, which give you the flavor that you prefer so much. So the different brands that you buy, they differ in terms of the composition of the cup that you finally drink, and then that's why you say, I prefer this brand over that brand. These are just some of the components that we drink. These are not all the components. Obviously, there are many more. They are just written in terms of classes of compounds. So when you say catechins, they are coming essentially from two compounds. So if you see the gallic acid part, so this comes from the gallic acid part, and so there are galates, which are essentially esters. So these are called as catechins, and these are called as thiaflavins. So they give you a flavor, and then you have tannic acid, you have caffeine, and you have other flavoring compounds. So there are a number of ones that are extracted or leached from the tea leaf. So remember, when you drink tea or coffee, you are drinking all these chemicals, and you're sort of gulping down all these polyaromatic compounds. Okay, so typically, just to get you started, just to give you a flavor, that if you take, let's say, 2 grams of tea and you put it in water, somebody was mentioning refluxed. So yes, so if you put it in water and reflux it for 1 hour, okay, normally we don't boil tea for 1 hour, but if you have to take this tea, reflux for 1 hour, 2 grams tea, you get a total soluble solids of 40%. That means out of this 2 gram, insoluble part is 1.2 grams and the soluble part is 0.8 grams. Okay? So now that means if you take 2 grams tea, but now you don't reflux it, you take like, let's say 100 ml water and boil for 2 minutes. Right? What you will get is out of this 0.8 grams, you will get about 0.4 grams in your cup. Okay? So that means out of the 2 grams tea, the insoluble part 1.2 grams is a waste, and out of the 0.8 grams, that out of these 0.8 grams, only 50% is delivered in your cup, in your brew, in the infusion that you drink. The remaining 0.4 grams is all wasted. So your spent tea out of this 2 gram is 1.2 grams of the insoluble matter as well as 0.4 grams of the polyphenols and all the antioxidants in principle that could have been delivered but now have gone waste. So what you are consuming, what is the useful part of the 2 grams of tea that you have actually taken is only 0.4 grams, which means 1/5, which means about 20% is our, if I have to classify into classical chemical engineering concepts, 20% is the yield of this 2 grams of tea. That's why 20% of 2 grams, 0.4 grams has gone in your cup. 80% is waste. Do you think this is a good idea in terms of a chemical engineering point of view, that a yield of a reaction is only 20%? So that's the kind of things that we are looking at. So there is a tremendous scope that we can improve this 0.4 grams going into our cup. So you end up spending a lot of unutilized tea. So it's highly non-green process in the sense that there is a lot of wastage. And then people have looked at all kinds of things, making activated carbon, adsorbent and all those things. But finally, that's not what we grow tea for. We grow tea so that people can drink. And if you imagine that even if you get a yield of about 20%, even if I increase that yield to 25%, you can see how much benefit you will get in terms of the total crop output, total tea crop output. Even 1% increase means a lot in terms of tons of tea that you can make. So there is a scope for doing all this. So there is a scope for investigating all of these concepts. So first of these, first objective, if you think, could be, can we try to improve the delivery of soluble solids or polyphenols? Okay, that could be one objective. Second is, how do I do these? So one option would be, I can do trial and error. I can take different amounts of tea, I can take different amounts of water, I can take different temperature, I can boil it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I can keep on doing experiments and do trial and error and try to see where I get my yield maximum. So remember, our yield is only 20% in the tea. Yield in the sense of whatever the soluble component from the tea granules, only 20% of that is going in the water in the cup that you drink. So one option is, do trial and error. Okay. That's not a good option because we don't understand anything by them. And even if the tea is different and even if you have little different conditions, you can't keep on doing trial and error all the time. So what could be a better engineering approach to delivering more soluble solids? Okay. One of the option is to, first of all, when you say engineering approach, what that is, how it is different from this trial and error is that you are going to go by engineering concepts. You are no longer going to do trial and error. Right? So if I have to approach this problem from an engineering point of view, think about it as, I have a chemical reaction, I get a yield of 20%. How do I improve the yield of a chemical reaction from 20% to some higher number? Right? Even if it is 25%, it is acceptable. It's a 5% increase, but it's a 25% increase over the existing yield. Okay? So that itself is a good target. So what are the engineering concepts that I need is, first of all, I would need to think about what are the fundamental steps that are involved in this process. Unless and until I understand all the fundamental steps, I can't make a model and predict the infusion profile. And if we can't make a model and predict, we cannot improve. So that is the sort of engineering philosophy that we try to learn in our career, that we are engineers, so we don't do trial and error. we try to investigate from a fundamental point of view. We try to make a mathematical model and we try to predict. And then once we do this prediction, we need to look at two aspects. One aspect is loose tea that all of us drink, but the whole of Western world does not use loose tea, they use tea bags. So a lot of the world's consumption is of tea is in the form of tea bags, whereas in our subcontinent, India, Sri Lanka, those kinds of places, it is the loose tea that we drink or that we infuse. So we need to not only understand these steps, we need to understand these steps and make a model and predict for both these kinds of things. And that's what I'm going to sort of talk about today, as to how do we go from all these fundamental steps, how do we make a model, and then how do we apply that model to both loose tea and tea bags. Okay, so that's what is going to come. I will go a little fast in some of these slides. So first of all, what are the fundamental steps? So fundamental steps are: one, okay, now I have a tea bag or I have a loose tea. Now, some of you have already said in the chat box, there is a mass transfer process. Yes, so there is a mass transfer of components which are coming from the tea granule. It is coming out. Now, before that can happen, water has to go in first. So the first process is water going inside the tea leaf and swelling or infusion of water into that tea leaf. Once that water is inside the tea leaf, then the soluble components from that tea leaf dissolve in that water. Now that dissolved water, through that concentration, now that water containing these dissolved materials, polyphenols, catechins and so on, they have a concentration gradient, and now they come out, and there are two mass transfer processes. One is the internal mass transfer through the leaf, and one is the external mass transfer from the leaf or the particle or the granule into your cup. And if you think about a tea bag, now there is an additional resistance because of that tea bag paper. So water has to diffuse through that tea bag paper. There is a diffusional resistance for water to go inside, as well as there is a diffusional resistance for the infusion to come out from inside the tea bag to outside the tea bag in your cup. So when you take a tea bag, there are two more resistances arising out of the tea bag paper. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So we need to investigate all these concepts one by one, and we need to quantify all these processes one by one, and then combine all these processes into one model for mass transfer, and then we would be able to predict the infusion that we get from our tea matrix. So if you want to model something, you must be able to measure. So if I have to measure something, then three aspects come into picture. What is my accuracy of measurement? What is my reliability of measurement? And what is my reproducibility? So it turns out that fortunately for tea kind of, there are several well-developed protocols which allow you to measure what comes out of a tea matrix. So one is, if you take the UV spectra, if you plot UV absorbance as a function of wavelength, then you see a peak here which corresponds to something like 270 to 80 nanometers. So yeah, here is that peak, 270 to 80 nanometers. So this characterizes lots of the polyphenols that come out. And there is another smaller peak not shown here, but it is at 445 nanometers, and that peak corresponds to the color. So the redness of the tea you can very well measure by the wavelength 445. So these are well-defined things in the literature, and we could utilize that. And there are other methods for so let's say dissolved polyphenols. And we can also do an HPLC analysis and try to identify all these components that come out. So I'm not going to talk about these two right now. I'm only going to talk about the easiest method of measurement, that is the UV visible characterization at a wavelength of 270 nanometers, which corresponds to sort of a class of polyphenols, polyaromatic hydroxy compounds that come out. So obviously, UV visible is not a quantitative measurement. You need to have a standard and you need to have a calibration curve, and then we can make a calibration curve because the underlying component, if you see all of these compounds, the underlying component is this gallic acid. So we can even have a calibration curve with gallic acid. Gallic acid you can get pure from Sigma Aldrich and all these components, all these companies, and then you can make a calibration curve with gallic acid, and then you can, when you put all these things in UV, the gallic acid component is, you can say that my infusion has so many equivalents of gallic acid, because that is what we are using for our calibration curve for our UV. So results, when we write, we are writing in terms of gallic acid equivalent that is present in the solution, in the cup. Okay, so just a little bit, 2 slides about modeling. One is you are very well aware that there are different scales of modeling. So you could have made a model at a reactor level, at a particle level, at a pore level, or at a molecular level, right? So the scale of the model is reducing as you go from left to right. Obviously, the complexity of the model increases from left to right, but the depth of information that you get increases significantly as you go from left to right. And of course, the time and cost of model solution also goes up as you go from left to right. So if you have had a process modeling course, these are some of the things that you deal with in the process modeling course. And obviously, you would realize that if you are modeling at a scale of equipment or of the reactor, then you end up into algebraic equations. They may be time dependent, they may not be time dependent. If you are trying to model at a particle level or a pore level, you end up into ordinary differential equations, either in space or in time, or both. And if it is both, you end up into partial differential equations. So this is the sort of hierarchy of models, and then we need to think about what level of model we want, so that we can have a good balance between the information that we want and the cost of doing that model. Cost in the sense, cost in terms of time, cost in terms of computational facilities required, and so on. Time and cost are one and the same. So this is a judicial choice that we have to make when we need to make a model. So I hope you have studied some of these concepts in your process simulation course. So let's first of all talk about infusion and infusion of loose particles, right? So loose particles, as I said, we need to understand all these steps, and the first step is looking at swelling, water going inside of the leaf, right? That's the first step that we need to think about, first step that we need to quantify. And then once the swelling happens, then infusion profiles, and then comes our mathematical modeling. So I will go a little faster now that you are aware of all the things that you want to take into consideration and in developing in the model. Okay, so if first of all we need to think about what is the size distribution. So we need to have so whenever you buy tea, it is not going to be a one particle size. You need to have you will get a size distribution. So that's something that you need to measure. And if you have to do controlled experiments, you need to take a very narrow size particle distribution. So you can, what you need to do is you need to sieve and take smaller fractions for your experiments. Otherwise, if you take the whole tea, you have a whole bunch of particle sizes, and you don't know what is happening to which particles. So that's what we do. And if you have to investigate swelling, there are a couple of ways in which we investigated. We investigated a single particle, and with the help of a camera, we tried to look at the increase in diameter or increase in surface area with respect to time, how this particle becomes bigger and bigger because of swelling. Or you can take a bunch of particles and then you can do an infusion, and you can find out how much is the extent of swelling. So you can see what is the height of the bed before you start your infusion, and what is the height of the bed after you have started your infusion, and then you can quantify how much is the increase in volume, and then you can characterize the extent of swelling. Just to give you some results, these particles are small particles, so 0.6 mm particles. These particles are big particles, 2.49 millimeter particles, right? So there is a narrow distribution. It's not the whole T that is taken. We take a narrow distribution and the average is 0.64. So you can see that the smaller particles, the percent volume change, if you plot, smaller particles swell more, and you can see percent swelling is about 200%, which means particle is increasing its volume by a factor of 2. That's the amount of water that it is taking up. Okay. And if you want to think about different bed heights, our initial bed height, the initial bed height also makes a difference. That if I have an initial bed height of 17 millimeter, or if I have an initial bed height of 57 millimeter, the extent of swelling is different. It's like you're crowded in a train. The days of social distancing, crowding in trains is no longer acceptable. But imagine that you're crowded in a train, you just don't have that much space to move around. Same thing that happens to these tea granules as well. They are so much crowded because of the weight of the bed above that they don't swell to that extent. And you can see the increase in swelling. So you see the order of magnitude difference between the y-axis of this graph versus the y-axis of this graph. Single particle, if I take, how much it can swell, whereas in a bed, how little it can swell. Just doesn't have room, because then all the particles are sort of preventing each other from swelling. And I will tell you something a little bit more about the swelling, how it matters. And so you can change the orientation as well. You can take a different diameter and so on. Now, so don't worry too much about the results. There are a couple of things which I would like you to sort of conclude from these graphs. Okay, so another 30 seconds, just put it in the chat box. What you think you can conclude from these graphs, slide number 14 as well as slide number 15. I have some conclusions I have given, but you have to really go beyond these kinds of these conclusions. So 30 seconds, just put it in the chat box. Yeah, Naren, you can read.
Nothing is come.
Yeah.
People are thinking now.
Oh, okay.
Or they can maybe even put their questions at this point, right? So that they can at least ask them what's not clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's go ahead. You can continue writing.
Two things have come, irrespective of all the size.
Right.
Irrespective of the size, all particles follow same trend.
Yeah, same trend, correct.
Particles separated, more swelling increases. If
Correct.
particles separated, more swelling increases as individual swelling is high. Smaller sized particles experience high volume change, and highly packed goes less volume change.
Correct.
When size of the particles are small enough, it will have larger surface area with small amount compared to larger size particle with the same amount.
Correct. So good point that they have said. Surface area is one parameter that they have said. Right. So I'll come back to that surface area point. But yeah, so one more thing we can think about is swelling is a relatively fast process. You see the time scale, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, right? So if you want to think about process dynamics that you have studied in your process control, we can evolve a time constant for this swelling process. That will be around 20 seconds. It of course depends on the type of particles. It of course depends on the temperature. But you can think about this like let's say 100 seconds. Everything is practically complete. right? So it's like 5 time constants, everything is complete, right? Here also 100 seconds, like whole swelling process is complete. So you can say if you want a time constant dynamics of that swelling process, it's about 20 seconds. Now we have seen so many things that different particles swell to different extent. Now how do I understand all these processes, and how do I quantify this little bit better? One of the ways that chemical engineers understand different parameters or effect of different parameters is very peculiar to engineers, is we try to make things dimensionless. Right? So we can define a dimensionless swelling parameter as the diameter of the particle at any time t minus the initial diameter divided by the diameter at infinite time minus the initial diameter. So now this dimensionless swelling parameter is going to go from 0 to 1. And you can see these are data of different temperatures. And if you convert this into dimensionless plot, all of that data falls on a single unique line. And that unique line is a characteristic of that particular T. It's also once you have this dimensionless parameter, and then this dimensionless parameter, we can fit some models and evaluate the kinetics of that process, right? And you can see it changes very little based on temperature, but you can see that the dimensionless parameter is like the kinetics of that swelling. And then you can work out energy of activation of the swelling process. And I think the energy of activation I mentioned a little later, but yeah, I mean, you can look at the rate constant, and the rate constant depends on temperature, and we can evaluate the energy of activation of that swelling process. So far, in terms of engineering concepts that we have used dimensionless numbers. So that's one more thing that I want to emphasize. Don't just try to plot graphs. If you have to make sense out of those graphs, you need to convert those parameters into a set of dimensionless numbers, and those dimensionless numbers you can plot, and then that will give you a lot more understanding. So kinetics, the time scale of swelling is about 60 seconds, 65 seconds at 80 degrees centigrade. This is just coming as 1 by rate constant, not like the 5 times the ending time. And if you look at the dependence of this rate constant with respect to temperature, you can arrive at the energy of activation. So energy of activation turns out to be about 2 to 3 kilocalories per gram mole. And this number should also tell you something, that this swelling process is controlled by a diffusion. It's not like a chemical reaction. It is more of a diffusion of water through the leaf, and that's why the energy of activation is so very low. So that means this water infusion is a diffusion limited process. Next is we go on to measuring this infusion profile. So if you look at the gallic acid release as a function of time, now you can immediately see the time scale. Now earlier graphs I plotted in terms of seconds. Now I am plotting graphs in terms of minutes. Okay, it takes a long time, 15-20 minutes for this whole process to occur. Whereas what do? We stop after 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Right? This is where we stop typically, and we drain out the water. We separate the particles after 1 minute, 2 minutes. Right? So you can see how less we are infusing, and how much more could we have infused had we infused it for a longer time, right? So again, it also depends on the processing conditions, and there are some processing conditions where the leaf is sort of subjected to shear, and then depending on the infusion, depending on how much that leaf is sheared, then you get a corresponding increase in the infusion process. So even if you have to stop after 2 minutes, let's say 2 minutes is somewhere here, you can see that there is a dramatic difference between infusion for a normal CTCT, whereas infusion for T, which has been sort of sheared by different methods. So if you have to understand kinetics, now this looks like a first order process, right? But you see, it's not quite like the first order process, there are two time scales that are here. There is one time scale that is like this, dynamics, and there is another slower dynamics here. Okay. If you have to fit a first order model, first order kinetics kind of model, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit really well. Right? So if you just plot log c after infinite time divided by c after infinite time minus c at any time versus t, you don't get a good fit here because of this slower time scale. So what people did just in the 1980s, what people did is just try to modify it by a constant, by an intercept. So then what you're really measuring is the dynamics of this slower step, and the intercept is what you are really inferring by this constant A. So does this tell us the physics of the problem? No, it does not. Does it help to sort of quantify it a little bit better? Yes, it does. Right? And then I can use this K observed and I can do effect of temperature, and then I can find out the energy of activation. So we have just done it for different kinds of T's. Don't worry about what that T score means. But the different kinds of T's, the energy of activation is 916.4 kilojoules per mole. So if you think in terms of kilocalories, this is about 2 kilocalories, this is about 4 kilocalories, this is about 1 or 1.5 kilocalorie per mole. So again, this is also a partly diffusion limited process. So yes, we are able to understand a little bit more by going to this sort of a semi-empirical kind of model. That's what people did in the 1980s. Now, obviously, we need to go one level more because we are in 2020s. Okay, so if you have to think in terms of now two aspects, one is diffusion and one is the dissolution of the active components into this water. So there are two processes, and we are, as chemical engineers, we are the most endowed people to handle diffusion and chemical reaction. We do it all the time, all our life. We do diffusion and reaction simultaneously or in series or multiple reactions and so on. And one of the ways in which we do is to look at it as a Thiele modulus and Weiss-Prater parameter that you would have probably studied in your CRE course. So just to cut the long story short, we can analyze this process in terms of Thiele modulus, in terms of Weiss-Prater criteria, and you can look at the diameter. So this is the diameter of the granule, and look at the effectiveness factor of that granule. So as you know, as the particle diameters become smaller and smaller, your effectiveness factor goes on increasing, which means you are reaching true kinetics, right? So, but the Weiss-Prater parameter, eta phi square, you see, that is going towards 1. It is never below 1, like a truly kinetically controlled reaction. And then that's what we see, because our diffusion, energy of activation for the diffusion process is not like that of chemical reaction. It is more of like a diffusion reaction, diffusion controlled reaction. So you can see that almost for all particle sizes, you are still in a sort of a diffusional controlled process. Definitely at these kinds of Weiss-Prater parameter, you are completely controlled by diffusion of water and diffusion of the dissolved components coming out from that T matrix. But somewhere here, when the particle size becomes smaller and smaller, you are more coming into picture the essential, the intrinsic dissolution kinetics. They are dominating more and more. And then you can also, based on these, you can also work out the effective diffusivity of this process, and you can see that effective diffusivity is about 2.2 into 10 raised to minus 10. Oops, one cardinal sin I have made. I have not written the units. So let me write the units here. The units are meter square per second. Right. So this is like diffusion through solids, right? Membrane processes, right? These are the kind of diffusivities that you get in your catalytic processes, diffusion through the pores. Obviously, here there are no pores. It is not a porous leaf. It is one leaf. The diffusion is occurring through that leaf matrix. but it's the same order of magnitude of difficulty. So here is one graph that I would like to emphasize. Let us plot this gallic acid equivalent in the teacup versus the volume change. It's a fractional volume change. Now it's not percentage. If you have to plot in terms of percentage, this will just be 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and so on. And this is the data, all the data of our experiments. Right? What does this tell us? Look at two extremes. So this is one more thing that we as engineers do, is to understand the process. We try to look at limiting cases. So one limiting case could be swelling kinetics are far, far faster than infusion kinetics. If that had been the case, our graph would have looked like this red line. Our graph would have looked like this red line. All the swelling would have been complete before any infusion starts. If we had the other limiting case, swelling kinetics were so slow as compared to infusion kinetics, all the material would have essentially come out, and then the volume change would have occurred. Right? So that's the kind of engineering analysis that you need to do, is think about what are the limiting cases. Obviously, there are two processes happening simultaneously. Swelling is happening, infusion is happening. Now, what is the limiting case? Swelling very, very fast is one limiting case. Infusion very, very fast is another limiting case. And you can see all the experimental data shown by these symbols, they fall in between. That means both swelling and infusion processes are occurring simultaneously. It's not that one is more important than the other. Now you can see how much more insight we have got into the process rather than just this empirical or semi-empirical kind of equation. This equation does not tell us anything about all these processes. Whereas look at how much more information we have got, how much more understanding we have got about the process by doing these experiments, and not just doing experiments, analyzing the data from an engineering point of view. Okay, so next step would be, because these are simultaneous processes, we need to treat them as simultaneous processes in order to develop the model. So first easiest thing is we can do is 1D time dependent model. So you have a del C by del T term, and you have a del C by del R term. Let's treat the particle as a spherical particle just to make life simple. And then we can write the boundary conditions, and the R component here, because the particle is swelling, that R will change with respect to time. And then we have a mathematical expression how this R changes with respect to time. That's our swelling kinetics. That's what we had measured here. Yeah, that's what we had measured here. Right? So the kinetics that we had measured here, now they are helping us to develop a better model. This is like a moving boundary problem. If you have to give big names to all these things, you can say all these buzzwords that are there, but essentially the model is a 1D time dependent diffusion with a moving boundary for one of the outer surface of the granule. And then you can solve them in using any of the numerical methods that you know of. And this is what we predicted. So this is the gallic acid equivalent versus time. These are the symbols tell us the experimental data. Okay. The dotted lines are the lines for Spiro model, that is this empirical model, and the solid line is our model considering 1D time dependent diffusion. Okay. And you can see that this solid line, our model, does a much better job of prediction than this dotted line. You may think, they look very similar. No, look at this data. Look at the data here. right? Let's say 100 seconds you are brewing a tea. See, there is so much difference in the experimental data versus this model. So that is if your particle size is 0.4 mm, and this is if your particle size is 1.2 mm. So both cases we are able to predict things in a lot better manner. Now, any questions so far? You want to talk about anything? Then otherwise, I will go on to tea bags, and then I will cover tea bags little faster. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box.
Okay, one which had come earlier is, should we consider dispersion? So that was one question,
Yeah.
but now maybe students might put, but this was earlier question.
Yes. Yeah, so dispersion is there. Dispersion is coming into picture. That turbulent dispersion is coming into picture because you are agitating, and there's an external particle to infusion or particle to the liquid mass transfer. That's where the dispersion comes into picture. But we have seen that it is essentially a diffusion controlled process. Our energy of activation is so small, so the diffusion kinetics are limiting. External mass transfer is not limiting. That's why you are not considering the dispersion. That's why we are not considering the external mass transfer resistance. I hope that answers your question, Pavitran.
Yeah. So maybe in the meantime, when students think, I just want to ask, just one slide before you said, like, there is a difference between the old model and the new model, and again these are all based on narrow sizes,
Right.
of the particle, right?
Right.
I just want to have a different question, like, what if we mix different kinds of particles? That is what we usually get, and the sum of averages negate these differences.
Yeah, so the point that I want to make in this slide is, yes, the model that accounts for diffusion as well as swelling does a better job of prediction than just the lumped parameter kind of model. So if we have a whole bunch of particles, we'll just have to do an averaging process over different particles. But that's straightforward. It's not that complicated.
But the question is, I'm thinking on the devil side, will that not averaging over so many ranges nullify the difference? I mean, will it make this difference significant even still? Should we assume or presume that the difference between the model will be significant than the averaging over sizes?
Yes. So the difference is definitely there, irrespective of the particle size. So these are big particles. Even for this case, there is a difference. Even for this case, there is a difference. So that difference will be there irrespective of the size of the particle. And if you average it out, it's not going to go away. The error is not going to go away. It's not that one is predicting more and one is predicting less. Both cases, the lumped parameter model is predicting lower.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go forward. Now let's go to tea bags. Now here there is going to be, we need to think about. So again, so as I told you, there is a bag resistance. The particle that is there, the fabric that is there, that is going to offer some resistance. So we need to account for that resistance. So that was our first step. One is, of course, we looked at swelling, right? So a tea bag that is there, and after swelling, how it becomes bigger. So you can see the volume has increased. And in order to mimic that, we can mimic it by taking a sort of a, let's say, a cylindrical jar. And then you can think about cylindrical jar having a converging section or a straight portion or a diverging section. And then you see that the diverging section is having largest swelling because it allows particles to, it essentially reduces the hindrance, right? So the next important point would be, if this is the case, if this much is the difference in swelling between a sort of a hindered swelling process in a contracting portion, like a venturi if you want, or versus an expanding portion, right? What would happen to different shapes of tea bags? So the tea bags that, if you have observed any point of time, the tea bags come in different shapes, and some, I'm not showing you that data here, but or maybe perhaps it is there slightly later. Yeah, so the tea bag shape data is here. So you have a double chambered tea bag like this one, or you have a single chambered tea bag, or you have a circular tea bag, or you have a tetrahedral tea bag, or you have loose tea. So here we have compared the infusion versus time for different kinds of tea bag shapes, and then different kinds of tea bag shapes give you a dramatically different behavior of infusion. Loose tea is here, whereas single chambered tea bag is here. Whereas this is your standard, industry standard double chambered tea bag. This is a circular tea bag, and this is a tetrahedral tea bag. You can see how much better job it does of infusion. Right. So if you have to do reproducible experiments, you can't rely on humans to do this experiment. So you need to have a automated way of doing experiments of dipping the tea bag. So we had a motor, we had a sort of an arm, and then that was going through a bearing, and then the circular motion could be converted into a reciprocating up and down motion of the tea bag here. Right. If you were to rely on humans, humans would dip a tea bag at different frequencies, and they are moody people. You are in a good mood, you will dip your tea bag very gently. If you are in an angry mood, you will dip your tea bag a lot faster. So humans don't do experiments properly. You need a mechanized way of doing experiments, and you can control the rotational speed of this motor, and then that would change the number of times this tea bag gets dipped in and out per minute. So you can have 2 dips per minute, or you can have 5 dips per minute, or you can have 50 dips per minute. It's like a 1 Hertz frequency. And then you can compare all of that. And as you would expect, the higher is your dipping frequency, faster is the infusion. That's expected. Intuitively, it is expected. We know that if I have to get more mass transfer, we just have to do better agitation. But the point is, okay, not this experiment. Experiment is not the point. Point is, can we convert this into a model, into a predictive tool, so I can predict what will happen to any number of dips. I don't have to keep on doing experiments anymore, right? So you do experiments, but you do limited experiments, try to generate a model, and then you sort of eliminate the need for more experiments. Right, this I told we were talking about. So first thing that we had to do was to look at the tea bag paper. So you have different kinds of tea bag papers. Earlier, all these papers used to be cellulose. In the meantime, people had coated those cellulose along with polypropylene to get a sort of more hydrophobic character. Sort of sustainability issues, people have gone to papers made out of polylactic acid. Because lactic acid is you can have a green route for lactic acid, and therefore polylactic acid is a more renewable polymer than a hydrocarbon based polymer like polypropylene. You can have woven tea bags arising out of PET, polyethylene terephthalate, that's our polyester. And you can, these different tea bags you can make, and you can do the infusion study. But first of all, if you have to understand, if you have to quantify, you need to understand and quantify that resistance. First thing that you need to do is to look at the morphology. So this is, I'm just showing you 2 kinds of morphology. One is 100% cellulose paper, and one is PET, the polyester. It is a woven fabric. So you can see when it's a woven fabric, you can see how that, how these threads are aligned, and whereas here how they are randomly oriented. So you can go and look at this tea bag paper, and you can try to sort of quantify the pores that would be generated by this random arrangement of fibers. And you can do a sort of a histogram. You can plot the size distribution of the pores in terms of their pore area. And here the pores are much more well aligned, and the open area is much more well defined because it's a fabric, it's a woven fabric, and you will see that the pore area is significantly larger. So here it is about 40,000, 50,000, 46,000. Here it is about 2,000-3,000. So there is an order of magnitude increase in the porosity of these woven fabrics as compared to randomly arranged fabrics, randomly arranged polymer chains. And how that translates in terms of infusion, we did a membrane permeability kind of experiment. These are some standard experiments that membrane people do. Is if you put your tea bag paper here in between, and you have one chamber, you have a concentrated infusion, another chamber you have a diluted infusion, and you can quantify how the infused components migrate from the feed phase into the permeate phase, and you can work out a simple flux-based model. And so there's an inside, there's a feed side resistance, there is a tea bag paper resistance, and then there is a permeate side mass transfer resistance. And if you increase the speed of agitation, essentially this mass transfer resistance and this mass transfer resistance you can eliminate. And what you are actually measuring is the permeance of the tea bag paper. And so if you plot this graph of log versus log of this concentration versus time, you'll get a straight line from which you can evaluate the permeance of your tea bag paper. And then you can do this for all different kinds of papers. And I'm just trying to cut a long story short. The gallic acid equivalent, if you, with respect to time, if you plot, then these are different papers. So here the permeance is 26 into 10 raised to minus 5 meters per second. Here it is 3.3 into 10 raised to minus 5. So the permeance is changing by a factor of 8, whereas the infusion is changing by about 30 or 40%. Maximum, let's say, is 50% change, right? It's not even 50%. 1.2 is becoming 1.7, 1.8. It's about 30% higher. That means now, what is our important engineering concept? Relative importance of different resistances. So the tea bag paper is offering significantly lower resistance to the infusion process, whether the tea bag paper looks like this, cellulose, or whether the tea bag paper looks like this, right? The resistance offered by that paper is not very significant. Okay, now if you have to do a mathematical model of this process, right? So we can assume that this tea bag behaves like one vessel. Our external water behaves like one vessel, and there is an interchange between two of these vessels. They are connected. There is a flow that goes inside this tea bag, and there is a flow that comes out of the tea bag, right? So you can model it as like one CSTR as tea bag, another CSTR, which is our vessel, and there is a flow going in and out of this of each of these vessels, right? In your RTD course, you might have seen some of these kind of compartment models, 2 stir tanks with an exchange between them. So you can write a differential equation for that, and very standard things that we do in RTD. And here is that mass transfer process coming into picture. Now, because it's a bed, it is no longer granules, the external mass transfer resistance I can no longer eliminate. I have to account for that. The dispersion, somebody was asking that dispersion, that external mass transfer now I have to account for. So I can write a differential equation for a mass balance on the bag, mass balance on the vessel, and then I can eliminate this bag concentration from these differential equations, and we can write everything in terms of the vessel concentration. So I get a second order differential equation. We, as usual, we make it dimensionless. Arising out of that, we get a scale of the process, and we get different dimensionless numbers, right? I'll just tell you the dimensionless numbers. So the engineering concept is look at the mass transfer time scale. Mass transfer time scale we can characterize by a Damkohler number like this. Right. So that Damkohler number is here. Tau is 1 by KLA, and there is a mixing time scale or a residence time scale. V by Q, how much flow is going through. And this is like how fast are the concentrations inside the tea bag and how fast the concentration in the vessel will change. There is a diffusion time scale. Now remember that water has to diffuse inside and the infusion has to diffuse outside. So there's a diffusion time scale. Now there is a mass transfer happening across different phases. You have a tea leaf, which is a solid phase, and you have an infusion, which is a water phase. So you have a mass transfer not just within the tea leaf, but now you have mass transfer outside the tea leaf. So we characterize that by, if you have looked at it in heat transfer, Biot number is what characterizes the ratios of these two processes. In an analogous manner, you have a mass transfer Biot number. So you have an external mass transfer resistance, you have a diffusion mass transfer resistance or a scale. And then depending on the Biot number, if that Biot number is far less than 1, external is controlling. If that Biot number is far greater than 1, the internal is controlling. So you can understand all these processes. So I'm just making I'm just telling you some data. Dimensionless concentration versus dimensionless time if you plot. Now these symbols are data from all the different dipping frequencies, right? From 2 dips per minute to 50 dips per minute, right? All the data falls in a single straight line. That means our dimensionless model is correct. If you look at the temperature, all that data also falls on the same line. It's not just that if you superimpose this graph and this graph, they will be identical. Look at this one at one dimensionless theta, it is about 40%, 45%. If you look at one dimensionless, it is about 40 to 45%. At 2, it is about 60, 65, 70%. It is about 2, it is about 60, 65, 70%. So even these two graphs overlap, although I've shown it differently, but it is one graph essentially that the model is able to predict. All the data can be collapsed into a single curve, irrespective of the temperature, irrespective of the dipping frequency. And you can understand how, if you plot actually in terms of actual concentrations, how the gallic acid concentration equivalent changes with respect to time, how the profile changes with respect to temperature, 60, 70, 80 degrees, what happens to the concentration inside the tea bag, what happens to the concentration that you get in the cup. Now you see a dramatic difference. This dotted line is concentration inside the tea bag, and these lines are concentration outside the tea bag. So you take a look at any time, let's say 100 seconds, concentration outside the tea bag is like this, 0.5, 0.6. Concentration inside the tea bag is 2.5, 2.83 nearly. How large is the change? Lot of the infused tea is still trapped inside the tea bag. Okay. And just to so here the flow exchange between the two vessels, that is a fitted parameter, right? So I have one fitted parameter is the amount of water that is coming in and going out of that tea bag. But if you have to really understand and quantify how much of that flow is really going through, you can do a full scale CFD simulation to understand the hydrodynamics even further. So if this is your tea bag, you can visualize this tea bed or a tea bag like a cuboid, and you can have this up and down motion of this cuboid in the vessel, or you can think about the vessel going up and down and then this tea bag being stationary, just a reference frame. And I'm just telling you the result. You can solve actually the momentum conservation equation, turbulence model, and you can predict the velocity profile. I'm just showing you some velocity vectors. So when the bag is going upwards, all these velocity vectors are pointing downward. But you see also now there are circulations that are happening. Some fluid is coming out of this tea bag here. Right? You see some of these arrows are coming out. Some of these arrows are going in. Right? And then you can work out how much fluid comes out. So you see a circulation here. Right? you see a circulation here. It is circulating like this. So some material is going in, coming out, going in, coming out. And there is a small circulation here as well. It is going in from here and coming out from here. And there is a circulation here. It is going in from here, coming out from here. So these are the kind of things that happen, and you can quantify that, how much of the flow comes in, goes out. You can visualize in terms of velocity vectors. You can look at different conditions. Say, for example, this is for dipping frequency. What happens when you change the dipping frequency from 60 dippings, so 60 dips per minute to 10 dips per minute or 10 per minute. You can look at how the pressure profile changes, because the pressure profile is what is driving the flow. You can sort of draw a correspondence between the pressure profile and the velocity vectors that are here, because finally the flow is driven by pressure, because we are just moving the cup up and down. And this is a data of our Q flow rate that goes in and out from a 1D model, and the flow rate that is predicted by CFD simulations as circles. You can see that there is a very good match. So you can actually predict the flow. You don't have to anymore. You don't have to treat that flow as a fitted parameter, because you can evaluate the hydrodynamics and predict the flows coming in and going out of the tea bag. So this is what I wanted to cover. Just to summarize the kind of engineering concepts that we have used. One is using dimensionless numbers for generalization that leads to a predictive ability. Second engineering concept that we use all the time is comparison of time scale for different processes. The processes that we are having here are mixing, dissolution, diffusion, mass transfer, swelling. You can define ratios of these different time constants. So you can define Thiele modulus as a ratio of diffusion and dissolution process. Mass transfer Biot number is our external mass transfer and diffusion process. And you can sort of compare these different dimensionless numbers, and they tell us what is the relative importance of these processes. Energy of activation tells us that it is essentially a diffusion controlled phenomena, at least for a loose tea. When it comes to tea bag, it is diffusion as well as external mass transfer that comes into picture, because the flow that goes through the bed of particles, that is what is going to decide our mass transfer coefficient. You can develop models step by step. So first step would be to look at like fitting equations, either Spiro model or the equation for swelling Weibull kind of model. You can do a 1D model for a loose tea, 1D model for tea bag, and finally progressively we can now predict the whole 3D hydrodynamics around tea bag. So the point that I'm trying to convey is in any process that we come across, it can be a process as simple as our everyday process like brewing a tea, but you can analyze that process from basic engineering concepts that we learn in our undergraduate courses, all the 4 years of our undergraduate course, and gain an understanding, and ultimately we can model, and ultimately we can improve the process. So no matter what you're doing, whether it's a distillation column that you are simulating, or let's say a azeotropic distillation column you are simulating, or a membrane process you are simulating, or simple everyday process of tea brewing you are simulating, get into the habit of analyzing a process from a basic engineering point of view and making a model, right? So this work corresponds to about 6 years of work. It's 2 research projects sponsored by Unilever, and all these students are actually the ones who did. And by the way, so don't if you understand all these from fundamental processes, it gives you a tremendous amount of enjoyment, tremendous amount of thrill that you are actually able to predict something, and a byproduct of that enjoyment, or of the byproduct of the process, is that you will get your papers and all those theses, and all those things will happen automatically. You don't have to do anything for publishing papers. It is the process that we need to enjoy. of applying engineering concepts to any new situation, and everything else will just fall into place. These are the people who actually did all the work. So Bhushan did all the work on swelling. Geeta did all the work related to characterization. She used to do HPLC and trying to identify which components are coming out. Rao Sahib was the one who sort of developed that 1D model of diffusion with a changing boundary condition. Pallavi did the 1D T-bag model as well as the 3D CFD simulation. Durgesh was helping in our the T-bag characterization, so the SEM, the analysis of that, then some more characterization related things that he did, which I'm not showing because they are not that relevant for the modeling aspect. So this is what I wanted to cover, and if you have questions, I would be happy to answer.
Yes, sir. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll read them out for you now, sir.
Yes, yes.
The first question is from Kalevanan SA. He's asking, what would happen if we use partially closed boiling systems for obtaining maximum yield instead of open system boiling?
Yeah, correct. So the thing that happens is, of course, as you go higher and higher in temperature, your kinetics become faster and faster of the dissolution process. So you get more and more limited by the diffusion process. So you can't increase the infusion very fast. You can't increase the infusion to a very large extent. But yes, in the Indian context, we do boil our tea. But in the Western context, the Western world, they don't boil their tea. They more or less, it's a hot water infusion. So obviously their infusion is going to be much lesser than our infusion. And so boiling is one aspect. So if you keep it closed, obviously your water loss and is going to be less, and your brew is going to be that much less concentrated, so it's not going to appear that much bitter. But that boiling at high temperature does two things. One is it does oxidation. So some of these catechins do get oxidized, and then you start getting a different flavor in your cup. So unless you like the boiling tea, many people don't prefer the tea that is boiled so vigorously. In terms of the Western context, if you don't boil, the thing that happens is if you just have infusion in hot water and you are just doing this dipping process manually, very slowly, the infusion itself cools a lot, and therefore the amount of infusion that you get drops very, very dramatically. So yes, temperature changes during the infusion process also you need to worry about. Yeah, next question, I think Hariharan is asking, is the process of infusion going to be affected based on density of the liquid? Yeah, I mean, not really. Density does not affect, and frankly, we don't have much choice. We don't want to have infusion in alcohol. We would have infusion in water only. So there is a limited scope for us to change the density, but yes, density, it does not play much part. Is there going to be a difference when creating a decoction in water and later mixing the decoction with milk and directly adding tea powder to milk? Yeah, there is a difference. There is yet another, I mean, you're talking in terms of finally the taste of tea. Yes, there is a difference. The proteins that are there in the milk, some of them bind with these polyhydroxy compounds, catechins, and then they settle, or they are not released that well. The proteins or the milk solids that are there, they sort of go and adhere on the hydrophobic leaf, and then the infusion is different. So yes, decoction with milk and adding milk later gives you a dramatically different flavor. Okay, any other question? Okay, so shall we stop?
Nadir, you are not audible.
So we'll just wait for 30 seconds to see if there are any questions brewing.
Yes, yes, yes.
We need to give time for infusion of this.
It's a diffusion limited process. The slides go very quickly to your eyes, but the diffusion resistance from eyes to the brain is a lot.
We
Information.
didn't have the absorption time, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Can this modeling be further extended to other processes where same phenomenon? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I started with. Nowadays, we are brewing so many things to keep ourselves healthy and immune. Not just tea and coffee. We boil all kinds of herbs and take all kinds of infusion in hot water. Be it ginger, be it all these pepper or whatever sort of health benefits that you know of from different things that we use every day. All the processes are essentially the same. It's just the extent that is different. So if you take something like cardamom, it is a lot more rigid particle, so it doesn't swell as much. And because it's a rigid particle and a solid particle, it doesn't infuse as much because the diffusion process is limited there. So yes, all these processes are the same. You have that's the advantage of doing engineering, and that's the difference between sort of doing experiments blindly and trying to quantify things. So if you quantify these things, you can generalize it to any other process as well. Oh, thank you, Shashank. I also did not know when we started the Unilever project. I thought, what is there in this project? But then, as we went along, we realized that we are missing many chemical engineering concepts in the process. So we went on investigating one after the other.
So next time having tea, you want me to think all these equations?
No, next time you have tea, just enjoy your cup of tea. Don't think about diffusion and mass transfer and Biot number. You will not enjoy the tea. To enjoy tea, you need to have it with some pakoda or bhaji or something like that.
Right.
Not diffusion.
I think, in my opinion, sir, this is Dr. Rajan. Sorry, I am not putting a question. I'm just trying to add to what you have been saying.
Yes.
Add to what your presentation said. To do this level of science, it also requires dedicated minds working. So I have to salute on behalf of the team that your team has put in so much of work to unearth the science and engineering behind the tea infusion. It is also a message to the young generation that one has to put in dedicated amount of work to unearth the science and engineering behind some obvious things that we have and some more relevant things as well. Just wanted to compliment you, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, nothing. These are the ones who have actually been doing hard work. I have just been going and sitting in my office and talking. That's all. These are the ones that they do actually the experiments and model development and so on. I just keep on criticizing them. That's all I do. Nothing much I do.
And you have also helped my cause in a big way. I am going to teach extraction in the next semester. So you have done much of what I wanted to do in the next semester.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Right. So I think we can probably, if there are no queries, I think maybe we can just wind up. Yeah, Raghav, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. If there are any further queries, you can mail him.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Can you go ahead, sir?
You want more details about the model, you can download the papers and read them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for this insightful and informative lecture. It really was a delightful and enjoyable and a very new experience for us.
Thank you.
Now, I call upon Ms. Pooja to propose the vote of thanks.
Warm greetings once again. So I'd like to take this opportunity to propose my vote of thanks to all the dignitaries and participants sitting here. On behalf of the entire chemical engineering faculty at Shastra University, I give my heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Dr. Ashwin Patwardhan, for joining us today despite his busy schedule. We are really grateful for this opportunity to hear your thoughts and learn from your experience. Thank you, sir. I'd also like to thank our Dean, Dr. K. Rajan, Associate Dean, Dr. V. Polukami, and all other faculty members for their motivation and support, and for being the catalyst that inspired our students to do our best. I'd also like to thank our alumni members for their constant guidance and support in conducting this event. A special mention to all the people, all the students who have worked behind the scenes to organize and execute this online event. Last but not the least, I also like to thank all the students and all the participants, external participants present here for making this event a grand success. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Professor. Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Naren.
Yeah, bye.
See you sometime soon.
Yeah, over there or over here?
Anywhere. Not online, not on computer.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have now come to the end of this talk.
Thank you very much, sir.
I thank everyone involved in organizing and attending this lecture for making it a wonderful experience and a grand success. The recording will now be stopped. Thank you.